Good afternoon, members of the Lexington community. As many of you know, the Lexington High School project received strong support at the special town meeting on November 3rd, 2025, with a 91% affirmative vote to advance the project to a townwide debt exclusion election on December 8th. This video is recorded on November 6th, 2025, and is part one of a two-part informational series responding to frequently asked questions raised at and after Monday's town meeting. Part one focuses on project finances and risk management, and part two will address design, site planning, and construction topics. I'm Mike Burton, project director with Dorr & Whittier, the town's owner's project manager. Joining me today are Mike Cronin, director of the Lexington Public Facilities Department, and Jamie Miser, project executive with Turner Construction, as well as Christina Delangelo, project manager with Dorr & Whittier. So with that, why don't we get right into it? So, what is construction management at risk? A construction manager at risk, or CMR, this is a construction delivery method authorized by the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 149A. Under this approach, the town hires a qualified construction management firm based on qualifications and price, not low bid alone. In this case, the town has hired Turner Construction. The CMR is brought on during the design to provide a couple of different value adds to the project. The first is cost estimating. They are going to help us look at the cost at each design milestone. We're going to talk more about that later. Schedule. They are here to develop and maintain the target completion date. Logistical input. To ensure that our GMP includes all the costs associated with it, they provide us thoughts on logistics, and we make sure that all of those costs associated with that are built into the project. And finally, constructability reviews. They're looking at the drawings as the designers are proceeding, and they're looking at the constructability of it to make sure that they can actually get it built. And what this does is reduce change orders when we get into construction. Once the design is complete, the construction manager is going to provide what's called a guaranteed maximum price, often referred to as a GMP. The GMP model shifts the financial risk to the construction manager, who agrees to complete the project for a guaranteed maximum price. The CMR is responsible for managing cost, schedule, and the construction of the project to ensure, I skipped ahead, sorry about that, to ensure it is completed within the agreed upon budget. The town pays the actual cost of the work plus a fixed fee not to exceed that GMP value except for approved scope changes. This gives the town cost certainty before construction begins. So I'm going to let Jamie talk to you a little bit about who is Turner Construction.
So you may or may not know, right? So Mike talked a lot about who the CMR and what we do, and I'd like to share a little bit about who we are at Turner. So in a big picture, we're a North American-based international construction services company, and we're a leading builder and basically any market segment you can think about for buildings. We generally undertake large, complex projects, work to foster innovation. We embrace emerging technologies, and what we think we do the best is we make a difference for our clients, our employees, and the community. We have over 39 business units with over 11,000 employees, and we generally do, right now we're doing about 17 billion a year, and that's across 1,500 projects. Now you're probably asking, well, what does that do for Lexington? So Turner Boston, Turner was established in 1903, and we moved to Boston shortly thereafter. So we've been in Boston since 1909, with our first project being the 10,000 seat colonnade that was added to the Harvard Stadium that was built just 7 years prior. So we've been fully established in Boston for over 100 years, and we currently have over 475 professional staff, and we have our own labor force of carpenters laborers, and we're currently at just above 340 carpenters and laborers. We perform over $1 billion of work each year in the greater Boston and northern New England region, with our peak being last year at about $1.5 billion worth of work. And again, we build hospitals, we build K through 12, we build high rises, commercial, biotech. We're in a lot of the difficult, complicated work or challenging work. And Lexington High School is another quite challenging project. But I would want to share some of our CMR experience. And so you talk about risk here and what is the risk to the town, and once they agree to the overall budget value, what's the percent that we're going to come under that overall budget value. And I would like to share our experience with 3 projects. All of these, Wellesley High School, Concord Carlisle, and Josiah Quincy Upper School, we've all returned some percentage of CM contingency and or owner contingency on these projects. And there's varying degrees why there's leftover money at the end, but it's basically, in my experience, I've always been driven into me that we cannot exceed that budget value that is agreed to that goes to the town vote. And there are a lot of kind of mechanisms along the way that Mike will talk about it and how we do that.
This is Mike Cronin, the Director of Public Facilities for the town. The next slide is talking about what are the town's financial risks associated with construction manager at risk. So we have a spending and borrowing limit. The town meeting, the voters set a maximum borrowing authorization. At the town meeting, we requested the amount of $659.7 million, and that is the established cap for this project. The project team cannot exceed that amount without 2 things that need to happen. 1, a new town meeting vote. And then second, once the town meeting vote authorizes, there needs to be a town-wide ballot vote, a debt exclusion election that would be required to appropriate any additional funds. This process ensures full public control of any future appropriations. What costs of the project is the town responsible for? As you know, the MSBA is committed to contributing up to $121.7 million in grant funds for the project. With our partnership with the MSBA, certain aspects of the project will not be eligible for reimbursement. We know that we're getting 36.95% reimbursement, so there are costs that are not eligible, and all of those costs are the financial responsibility of the town. What are owner-directed scope changes after the guaranteed maximum price? So once in a while, there are small-scale changes that the school committee, the school department, the facilities department, recreation will ask for as part of just a general change. Maybe it's relocating a wall, maybe it's making an adjustment to a backstop, or maybe it's a finish within the building. Those changes will be funded through our already in place owner contingencies.
Okay. How is the project budget controlled after the debt exclusion vote? So a couple things here. These are some of the cost control measures already built into the project. So the CMR provides a GMP, or guaranteed maximum price, once the design is finalized. After that, the only adjustments can be made through change orders, and change orders can only be approved for specific predefined reasons, such as unforeseen site conditions, code changes, or town-approved scope adjustments like Mike just spoke about. All change orders must be reviewed by the OPM, the designer, and Department of Public Facilities before they are executed. The CMR contract also includes the protection for the town for schedule and cost adherence with liquidated damages and clearly defined non-compensable items. So what liquidated damages means is it's a set of money set aside for if the project is late, that gets applied for each day that it is late. So that helps protect the town in terms of schedule and in terms of cost. There's very specific language to cover, basically to say the town will not pay for mistakes. So that is all built into the contract that the town of Lexington has with Turner Construction. And I'm going to talk about it briefly here and more shortly, but we have these built-in contingencies to protect us against, inflation and unforeseen conditions. Those are all built into the number 659.7 today. There's another layer of oversight that goes into it. In addition to the project team, we have oversight by the town. The town has the Department of Public Facilities, and the town has done many, many projects and learned many, many lessons along the way. And so in addition to the DPF, we are also going to be having monthly budget reporting with a permanent building committee who I'm sure will be asking for updates quite frequently, and we will be there to provide it. MSBA oversight, that's the third layer. MSBA, as Mike said, is going to reimburse that 36.95% of eligible project costs. The MSBA reviews each monthly pay requisition. They look at all the cost codes. They look at how the contingency is being used. Furthermore, they review every change order, and they're looking at this for accuracy. MSBA is ultimately an auditor of the project. They're a financial partner with the town of Lexington, and they want to make sure that every penny is being spent properly. So that having the MSBA involvement, it really does provide an additional layer of financial accountability beyond the project team and beyond the town. So wanted to talk a little bit about some of the contingencies. So we've presented this slide before, and what's really important that I want people to understand is exactly that. Those contingencies are in the 659.7. In that 659.7 are about 124.3 million of contingencies, and they're broken down like this. We have design, escalation, tariff, and CM contingency, all built into the guaranteed maximum price with Turner Construction. Outside of that GMP in the total project budget are owner construction contingency and owner soft cost contingency. And when you add all of those up, that's around 124.3 million. All contingencies listed here are included in the 659.7. All contingencies are developed based on industry standard percents that are typically used on most MSBA projects. All unused contingencies result in savings that are returned to the owner, which is money that is not borrowed by the town and therefore reduce the total project budget. Sorry, we have some animation here. Wanted to talk a little bit about timeline and how we're going to ensure that we maintain or stay on or under budget as we move forward. So the vertical red line represents where we are today. We are coming up on the December 8th debt exclusion vote. And we're going to have 3 more opportunities to look at the budget and estimate. And so in March of next year, during design development, we will be performing the DD estimate. And after that, the same year, in August, when the construction documents reach 60%, we will take another look at the budget. And in January of 27, the construction documents 90%, we take a last look before we go to the GMP. Now, why do we continue to look at the costs? Because as the design develops, costs can go up. And so the MSBA, having built hundreds of schools, has instituted this process to ensure that we are maintaining that budget. And so the MSBA wants to know that that cost is not going to go up, and they require us at each of those 3 remaining estimates to come up with what's called a value engineering list, also known as value management. And so what value engineering is, it's a list of ideas that the project team has already developed where if the estimate was to go up, we already have plans in place on how to get that number back down. So value engineering is a process that's built into the MSBA model. We've already begun the process. We will have that list. We will continue to develop that list as we proceed. But again, it's all about keeping that number at or below what's voted by the town. The other thing that our project is instituting is something called targeted value design. And targeted value design is basically a process where the engineers and designers, the people drawing the project, are getting together with the builders, the people that are building the projects, and that's Turner Construction. That could be subcontractors of Turner Construction. And we're looking at the design that we've just set and locked in at with the MSBA after we submitted our schematic design. And we're looking for opportunities. Is there a more efficient way to do something? Is there a better, more cost-efficient way of doing something? And so it's really to add value and really zero in on the price. And we've been going through this process for the last couple of weeks, and we've already found a couple of cost savings opportunities. So we are going to continue to perform the targeted value design process. So to what extent do MSBA projects experience cost overruns? In other words, I think the question, the way I heard it was, how many MSBA projects have been required to go out and get a second vote? So what I can tell you is the MSBA projects very rarely experience cost overruns for a couple of different reasons. The first reason is the total project budget itself. It's a form that they used to call the 3011. It's a very detailed Excel file that the MSBA has been using on almost all of their projects since that document was developed. What that document does is it accounts for every dollar that's going to be spent on the project. This document is scrutinized by the designer and the OPM and DPF, and then finally by the MSBA. And so what happened at the last October board meeting was they approved our total project budget, which means they agree with the values that we have set aside to perform this project. The next thing, and I talked a little bit about it, the contracts that the town of Lexington has with the design team. There's risk management built into those documents, and that's a contract with Turner Construction, Dorn Whittier, SMMA, and so those contracts are already in place, and they're designed to protect the town. There's also contingency. We spoke about contingency and all the layers that are built into the project, and those are there again to protect that number, that 659.7. And then there's everybody's looking at the dollars here. There are mandatory MSBA, designer, OPM, and DPF cost reviews for all changes in the work. And then lastly, or second to last, the guaranteed maximum price model itself. GMPs, they are intended to sound or to be what they sound like, which is exactly that. It's a guaranteed maximum price. And then finally, the CMR delivery method itself, it's a very collaborative, it's a very transparent, open book cost tracking method. So we see every dollar that's spent on the project. And so for that reason, the MSBA projects rarely experience overruns. In fact, I think we saw not a lot, but a few projects that got caught during that COVID bubble who had to go back for a second vote, which was very unfortunate. But what I can tell you is that since COVID, we've been seeing projects consistently come in with bids lower than established in the budget. And so recently we have been seeing good news.
So to what extent do the Lexington projects experience cost overruns? So this slide is a snapshot of the 6 large projects that have most recently been done in Lexington. This represents roughly $250 million worth of projects. And to be clear, every single building project came in under budget. Every single one of these came in under budget. The only exception is that the Fletcher Field solar canopy, the one that's going adjacent to the police station, required an additional $1.2 million request, which was appropriated. And that's really due to the complex features of the solar canopy design that was in place for that project. But I wanted everybody to see this, that there's $250 million worth of work here, and every single project came in under budget. Next slide.
So there were some questions about the MSBA's failed vote policy. And so we have presented this slide before. This is a copy and paste right off the MSBA website. Anybody can view it. But there were really 3 questions about the failed vote policy that we wanted to provide some clarity to. So what happens after a failed vote? If the initial local vote fails, the MSBA allows 1 limited resubmission within a defined window, which is 120 days. If that also fails, the project is closed in the MSBA system and the town would have to restart the multi-year process from the beginning. This is going back to submitting statements of interest, going into the eligibility phase, and then completing another feasibility study, which is what we have been doing roughly for the last 2 years. If the debt exclusion fails, can the town create a new project? No. The MSBA's failed vote policy limits any resubmission to the same project scope previously approved by the MSBA board. So this was just approved at the October MSBA board meeting. From there, only minor adjustments like timelines or scope reductions, but it has to be the same plan. It cannot be a new design or program. Finally, does the Department of Revenue also, allow cost increases without new votes? No. Per DOR guidance, any increase in borrowing authority for a debt excluded project requires a new town meeting authorization and a new ballot vote. Within the already approved amount, the town may manage minor cost fluctuations through existing contingencies, bid savings, or project scope adjustments, but it cannot exceed the total voter-approved borrowing authorization. So that's going to conclude part 1 of 2, and part 2 will be covering project design and construction. Thank you for joining us today.